Good morning, everybody, and welcome to day number 7 of Douglas County Commission 2027 budget hearings and deliberations. Today is Tuesday, July 14th, 2026, and I'm going to turn it right over to Sarah and Brooke to kick off the conversation for us this morning.
Thank you, commissioners. We put several things in the agenda packet for today to follow up from yesterday on. The first of which I want to go over is the behavioral health fund updates. We added in red the projects there that you have now moved over from the general fund to the behavioral health fund. And then if Brooke scrolls down, you can see that your current capacity is just under $1,953,776. So that is what is remaining as capacity inside ongoing capacity to support ongoing operations inside the behavioral health fund. Any questions on that?
The 11 million, how much of that has been moved from the general fund in there?
Well,
you reduced it to 4 something.
Yeah, it's about $1 million. If you add up all those in red, that is about $1 million. And then I already reduced the transfer into the fund by $1 million to get to the proposed budget.
And the sales tax dollars went up to 7 million something, right?
Correct. Yeah. Brooke, you want to show them the revenues up there so you can see we're anticipating 7.2 in sales tax revenues.
And then the 4.4.
Yeah, it's reduced from 5.4 for this current year, revised. Okay. So then let's go, Brooke, to the list of twos. We had a couple questions as staff when we were working through this. Let me get my stuff up too, Brooke. Yeah, as staff, we wanted to make sure we went back and talked about the HSC Financial Empowerment Program. Some of us thought you had discussed it and some of you hadn't. So we, and then and it's kind of in different places on commissioners' worksheets. So I guess I would just want to make sure I'm not missing that if there were commissioners that were interested in supporting it.
My conclusion or my takeaway from yesterday was that we did have a majority, if not a unanimous support for that $20,000. We had some discussion about the fact that it was on the same line in our spreadsheets as the 321 number that we all agreed to move. And so we had some discussion about
that we had consensus.
Okay.
Because
I don't think I talked about it.
Okay.
I really think I only saw one commissioner who specifically said they wanted to fund it. So that's what I wanted to make sure.
And that's my mistake. I had a different takeaway. So.
And I put it as a one-time funding. It's currently a pilot program, kind of extending that pilot program and looking at other avenues for if there are banks and financial institutions that would provide that free of charge through a grant process. So that's what I did with it.
Supportive or not?
I am supportive, and I was supportive yesterday too.
Of ongoing as requested, was that how you had indicated including it?
Yes, and I believe I think I also moved it. Pretty sure I moved it as well. So yeah.
Got it.
I like the idea of it being one-time funding.
Okay. Commissioner Dorsey?
I don't have an opinion one way or the other.
You're a bit of a swing vote at the moment.
So. Oh, I thought you had 3 already.
Well, we have 2
for one time and 2 for ongoing.
Oh, well, I would at least vote for one time.
Okay.
Okay, so we will put it in for one time. All right. And then Brooke, if you go back up to 2, we went back through everything again and we found a 2 that we hadn't included yesterday. And so I think that's a good place to start. And that's the Baldwin City Chamber of Commerce. There were I think there were 2 people that were supporting it one time, and then a commissioner that supported it ongoing. So that is a new insertion into this list.
I believe I supported it one time.
I did also, the request was written as a one-time request. That's not how it was presented when we heard in the budget hearings. But I did put it in as one time, kind of as my economic development theme that I was going through. But I also recognize that something we need to talk about is that we have discouraged chambers from applying because we're trying to go in a different direction with the EDC. So I just assumed that we would have somebody to kind of lead that conversation too.
I didn't include it on mine because of our previous year's conversation about not funding chambers specifically. I will say, I mean, I like that it's a specific initiative, and I could be persuaded into one-time funding. It sounds like, Sarah, I heard you say you saw a note to support it for one time and to support it for ongoing.
I think there was one commissioner that I think Gene, I wasn't sure. It looked like he was ongoing, and then 2 that were one time.
Well, that was a mistake then.
Okay.
Okay. Are you supportive of that request at all, or?
Well, it seems to be a departure from what you guys have done in prior years. I recall before I was a commissioner, Eudora Chamber came in with a request, which you flatly denied.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I think that.
On the other hand, some of the EDC money, I suspect, has floated into the Lawrence Chamber coffers.
Yeah, I think to Commissioner Willie's point, there's some more to still for us to unpack as a commission about how we are funding economic development partners, and the distinction between EDC and the chamber is an evolving conversation. Commissioner Kelly, do you have any thoughts to share?
Yeah, I think we're making progress on finding a split, and you all received the sort of the packet that came from the EDC, and we need some clearer guidelines than just what you saw. But I think it sort of starts to address Commissioner Dorsey's comments about how we're dividing those. And so I think I didn't include it in mine because I think if we do this, we're sort of going back the other direction. So that's why I didn't include it.
And I included it mainly because looking back to that spreadsheet that Sarah sent out, just taking a look at and I did mention this with the Baldwin childcare request too, just the differences in funding that we've seen across the county, and just wanting to see what Dana could do with the $10,000 to give her the opportunity to show us what she could do with the money in Baldwin, because she hasn't had that opportunity before. And so if she could potentially drive some sort of economic opportunity with those dollars through the Be Well program, I would just like to provide her that opportunity, because we have provided the EDC multiple opportunities with larger dollars of money, and this is a smaller pool of money. Yeah, so that's kind of why I opened up the door.
I'd say the part that made me uncomfortable even putting it in was because we've discouraged all the chambers from applying, which Eudora believed us and didn't apply. And so that's that to me does not feel like we communicated that adequately, so that even though I'm $10,000 one time to help with their health fair and initiatives, which I think are big in Baldwin City, doesn't bother me, but the larger context of it is a little more complex.
Down the road, what I'd like to see, and we have a committee on the EDC that's working on sustainability issues, like how do we create, what I'd like to see is if chambers had that, they may go to the Economic Development Corporation of Douglas County and say, I have this specific request, and they can use some of the funds that they've put together to decide whether to fund that or not. We need sort of an umbrella organization for the many good partners that are doing work in our economic development space. This is a theme we have here where they all come isolated here. Who is our, what is the entity that sort of is heading up that work?
To that point, would we consider $20,000 to the EDC for chamber economic development for our smaller communities? Is that an opportunity to consider? And then we would encourage our chambers to work with the EDC?
I think the whole mission of the EDC is countywide. And so if we were to give a small pot and say, it would suggest that that's all we think you need to be doing for our smaller cities. That's my concern. I think as we keep in the discussion, it's supposed to be the broad overarching organization that speaks for economic development across the county.
Well, I was getting to what kind of Commissioner Kelly was suggesting. So would be that pot of money for the chambers to then work with the EDC.
Well,
And maybe I didn't say that clear enough.
we're already giving the EDC of Douglas County $200,000. They haven't defined how they're going to spend it.
I appreciate the creativity and I like the idea. I don't think we're there yet with the EDC. There is some discussions about a joint venture with the chamber. That vote is coming up when the EDC will do it, because that would mean essentially the way it's designed now is, some folks want to see that all money that goes to the EDC, then a special group gets to decide how that will be dispersed. I'm not in favor of that. I'll just say that, and instead, I think it should just be the chamber's capital fund. So that's an ongoing conversation. And I think I like the idea, but I think maybe we're a year away from it. Yeah.
I think for the greater context of this conversation over time, I'm going to stick with I'm a no on this request. Though I do appreciate the specificity and the creative way of thinking that Baldwin City Chamber has. I'm interested in both Baldwin City EDC and Baldwin and Eudora chambers alike. Being more engaged by the EDC and a part of those conversations for future opportunities. And I think this is a space where we can continue to have these conversations that encourage that kind of, I suppose, filtering and collaborative, goal seeking around some of these ideas instead of these isolated requests, because we've said no to Eudora Chamber a number of years for their requests.
And I can go along with that. I think it does, even when I put it in, I think it muddies the waters in ways I'm uncomfortable about, but I do think we need some larger discussions about, instead of piecemeal things coming to us here, how is that work being funded overall?
Good to have flagged it for conversation.
So no action. Okay. The next one was fund balance reduction. I feel like we should wait on that till we kind of get through the rest of where we're at with one-time expenses, because it wasn't specific. The next one was two commissioners recommended eliminating funding for the tenant eviction defense program.
Commissioners, I want to give you an opportunity to say whatever you'd like to say about that.
Yeah, so I was one of those commissioners. So we don't yet quite have the outcomes in just yet. And so what I put in my worksheet was recommending pulling the funding or pausing the funding at this time until we have all of our outcomes in, so that we can weigh those outcomes. We can understand what we're currently seeing from that particular pilot, and then determine how we want to move forward with the pilot after understanding what we currently have going with the grants that are currently funding and those outcomes from the grants that are also funding the pilots, and then the pilot that the county is also currently running, and then take a look at what we want to do moving forward.
there's something I wish I had asked more about, I mean, probably in our hearings, and that's it's a different line item, but extending access to counsel in the self-help center. And I kind of, in my head, kind of wanted to know how those two line items work together.
I think the expanded help center people sometimes are dealing with things other than evictions, uh, family type issues, custody or divorce or
100%.
whatever.
Yeah, that was the thought behind that request, was that it was just general support, not right to counsel. Not, so, you know, when staff reviewed it with self-help, they said they could always use more help, but staff's recommendation was sort of medium, because I think we got a lot to figure out in this space, and maybe it's something that would come later.
I think you're right. We didn't ask about that request when self-help was here, but what I recall from the narrative and then anecdotally, working in that space, otherwise, it is a lot of civil family law, other areas of civil law too, but civil family law is the most significant need, and they don't have enough volunteer attorneys or paid hours by KLS to support that need currently. Commissioner Dorsey, do you have?
We've kind of beat this to death, but the only other thing I would say is Holistic Defenders has an $85,000 private grant that they've been defending eviction clients appropriately with for 2 years, going on 2 years. So I'm not sure what we're going to gain out of a $40,000 pilot program that isn't already being done. And if we're missing data or they're not collecting data that would be helpful, we should just ask them to include it.
I appreciate and respect both of your perspectives. I think 7 months is not long enough to really call it a pilot and to have many outcomes to look back at. And so an 18-month, a full year and a half feels much more viable for that to me. And the current funding that this commission has approved for the remainder of 2026 is bolstering capacity and increasing capacity in a significant way, I believe. And so I think another year worth of the work and the information will be helpful for this commission to really decide how to move forward.
The only other thing I will say about this is a lot of the eviction clients that Holistic Defenders gets involved with have some kind of mental health or behavioral health issue. I'm not so sure that 40,000 couldn't go in the behavioral health fund.
I think it would only, according to the definition that you asked us to prepare, Commissioner Dorsey, the only way that would qualify is if the clients, we got some sort of documentation that they had mental health or substance abuse issue.
Well, I'm not saying all do, but
Right.
I've heard stories about some who do have that issue.
But if they don't, then is that an appropriate use?
No.
So I was up for the pilot for the 18 months, and then we'll look at outcomes and see if there's a different direction or if that's the direction to go. So I did leave it there.
Likewise.
Right, moving on.
The next one would be the comprehensive zoning code update. It's a little hard to tell, but I think I had 2 commissioners that recommended cutting it. And so I think it's probably worth a conversation.
I cut it to 100,000 thinking that it would start late in 2027. We haven't even read the Clarion. Well, I read part of it, but we're talking about that this week. So I thought it was premature to make a decision that we even need a code update. So I cut it back. Related to that is depending on how the Clarion discussions work out, I also cut funding to the city planning commission, thinking it would be cheaper for us to hire 2 planners than to pay 1/6 of the city planning department to provide the service.
I did cut the consultant. After listening to our team talk kind of about the process and the long runway. Initially, I thought about leaving it in, but after thinking through the timeline and the fact that the team said that it would take approximately like 2.5, 3 years for the work. They also said that not having a consultant would increase the timeline to a couple of years. And so knowing that the consultant would also take a couple of years, and not having a consultant would increase the timeline for a couple of years. I'm not sure that spending $300,000 on a consultant and having a similar timeline is worth the money, the return on the investment. When I think about opportunities for staff to upskill and to learn how to do this work, I also see it as an opportunity to gain skill set. And then I see that also as an opportunity for merit. So moving forward.
I think we intended that it was not the same time frame. It's 2 or 3 years with a consultant and it's 5 or 6 without. So it was plus, not in exchange. So if you want this done in-house, I think it will take substantially longer.
I think we keep a pretty lean staff in zoning and codes. I think they had a position that was held open for a while that we didn't fill. I think we've kind of kept them pretty lean, and I don't know that they can take this on with the rest of their work and still kind of provide that customer feedback and customer service that we need. So there's a backlog of work for them already, and we ask a lot of them. So I think it does have to have an outside consultant. It didn't bother me to put it in now, because I think sometime within 2027, we'd be looking for bids and choosing a partner.
I'd have more heartburn about it if it wasn't one-time funds. Because as Sarah said yesterday, we'd actually take it out of this year's one-time funds and not, with our where we are with fund balance, our cash basis. And this is very technical work. I've started to read the report, and to Commissioner Willie's comments, I think I've heard a lot of positive comments about how our zoning and codes department interacts with the public. I don't want to take them away from that work to be doing some very technical work. That I also think it's helpful to have a consultant that has looked at other counties and has that as a data set already, rather than our staff who would then need to go research other counties. And they do some of that already, but I think the depth of information that the consultant has, the consultants, and we wouldn't necessarily choose Clarion, I want to say that right off the bat, but if there is value in having looked at the city codes, I am completely convinced that our codes need to be reviewed and edited and determined. I've heard from the community quite a bit that there's some very confusing things and some things that make it hard to get proposals through. I think staff has seen the same thing, so I was supportive of it.
I remain supportive of it, and we'll also make a note that we heard from staff that the 300,000 is really considered to be a maximum one-time price, and for the overhaul that I think that will come with, and that is necessary for us long-term, that's a pretty reasonable price tag.
Is that 300,000 being spent in 1 year?
Oh, it'd probably go over multiple years.
So why not just allocate what we need for 27?
I mean,
It's
I
one-time
don't know
dollars.
exactly how much I'm going to need in 26 and 27, so we would just put the whole amount. I mean, once we get a bid, or once we get an RFP, we'll put the money in equipment reserve and spend it over multiple years.
All right, commissioners, I think we can move on to the next one.
We had two commissioners that were interested in funding the Choice Pantry from Salvation Army. It's $18,000 one-time request.
Anybody, I mean, I don't think we have to dissect every one of these, but I want to give commissioners who supported them an opportunity to make their case if they would like.
I funded it or suggested funding it because I think food security in Douglas County continues to grow, and some people go to Salvation Army rather than just foods.
And I also funded it as well. So it encourages and opens up our food system.
I'm not going to be convinced the other way. So I think that, yeah, certainly that one thing would not be a reason to me to bring that organization on as a new partner. Though I hope that they continue to stay engaged in the work with other stakeholders. I think we can move on to the next one, Sarah.
Okay, so the next one I think was related to the equipment reserve transfers for economic development and the commissioners line. We talked about that quite a bit, I think on Friday or yesterday. So I think the way the commissioners left that is that we will bring it back to you at year end with a recommendation to move it back out of equipment reserve and back into the general fund, and just fund into the general fund balance. Is that where we were on that?
That was my understanding.
Okay. And then the next one is there were two commissioners that were interested in funding the Gelada Care Coordination Project.
I put this in and it was based on the MyRC platform that we're currently using, which relies on Johnson County also supporting it and keeping it up because it started as their program. And I don't expect that any software package does everything that it needs to do. But if by any chance that tool were to go away, I wanted to make sure that we had something available for whatever would come next for that. So that's why I had it there.
I was sort of surprised, and especially Commissioner Anderson's sort of interpretation of the behavioral health fund. This wasn't out of behavioral health fund cash reserve. I mean, it's listed up there as being from the general fund cash basis reserve.
I think that's a typo.
Okay.
It says BH admin. It should be behavioral health fund cash reserve.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not married to this. I think it's going to take some time, but we do have cash reserve funds in that behavioral health. And so it seemed like I heard that my resource is sort of going away and wanted to make sure we had a different collection tool.
Want to say, Commissioner Dorsey? I will say I had this on and took it off and had this on and took it off. And so I am, I guess not married to it is maybe a phrase that resonates for me too, just because we have heard some recent conversations that there's definitely some more discussion to be had amongst all the stakeholders and some determination about whether or not it's makes sense and feels fruitful for everybody. But to that end, it is one-time dollars and sort of on reserve if it should be needed. And I think that is probably smarter than having to come back to the drawing board about the conversation or waiting for a more fully baked conversation if we have the dollars set aside for it. I want to really maintain that a strong focus on data, especially in behavioral health and information sharing in the behavioral health and emergency services systems. And if this ends up being an agreeable program, then it should go a long way towards that. So I think I can throw my vote in on that. Commissioner Anderson, do you have anything you want to say about this one?
I did not. Launching any sort of social health access referral platform is a huge lift. And the fact that Bob did reinforce that all of our partners just got on board with it, I think is a huge success and something that should be celebrated. Knowing that MyRC is potentially going away, I think is a risk and it is a gap that does need to be solved. Also knowing that all stakeholders are not quite yet on board with whatever that next change is. I think those conversations still need to be had. So I did not put gelato on my list because I don't think we're quite there yet to make this decision. And I think it truly does require more conversations and all stakeholders to say yes and to really get behind a social health access referral platform, especially when you have just launched and got everybody behind your data collection and the platform that you want to launch, especially when it comes to integration. And so I would really like all partners to be at the table and to agree on the next platform before we really put dollars and a funding ask behind it. But that's just my preference.
And I recognize we're not there yet. I also, the funding we're talking about is for the next 18, could be available for the next 18 months. And I think that's a long time frame where things could happen. And I wanted to make sure that we had the ability to pivot if we needed to, was my thought.
Yeah, I hear you, Commissioner Anderson. I'm learning a new term today. So what did you call it?
I called it a social health access referral platform.
Okay, never heard of that. Rural platform. Cool, you learned
Like
something.
there should be an acronym there somewhere.
It's called a SHARP.
Sharp.
Sharp, okay.
In German, that would be all one
I
word.
mean, I actually I felt like the name of this sort of made it a little difficult for me. It was implementation of a program. I wouldn't expect, and I think we heard from Bob that Gelada is just the name they've put there, that we would have partners come together to work on what that is. I never considered that it was like it was set in stone. It was always referred, but I can see how the title, and maybe I'm misinterpreting that. Maybe we've already decided on the platform, but that wasn't, I think, what I heard.
That was my interpretation also, and maybe it's worth rephrasing.
So like for the consultant that we just discussed, like Clarion's not listed, right? And so initially I thought it was Clarion, but then we confirmed that it's not Clarion. We have not, that we will go out for RFP. So in this situation, right, Gelato is listed, and so it doesn't state that we will work with our stakeholders to identify the platform of choice. So yeah, for me, I guess I'm under the impression that the platform has been chosen, and that is the direction that the group or maybe staff would like to go in.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that would be reason for me to sort of say like maybe we hold off on it. Yeah.
All right, holding off. The next one, we had two commissioners at differing amounts want to support funding for solvency funding for headquarters. One was the full amount, and one was 75,000. And that was you.
I think I was going to say.
That was you.
I reduced from whatever the ask.
Are you on?
No, yes. Yeah, the 75,000 I reduced down from the ask because I think they still do an important role in suicide prevention. And I would look at this as one-time funding for this year only. I know there's concern that it could be a trend of multiple years, but this is what before is what is before us. So I reduced the funding to what I thought was a more reasonable level.
I did also fund solvency funding because I think we need to make a determination or have a policy around solvency funding, but also around fund balance because we don't have anything in writing or anything to hand out to our partners to really indicate where we stand around solvency or fund balance. I funded it this year until we can really, as a commission, come together and determine where we want to stand and guide our partners in a particular direction so that they can truly understand how to approach us.
So I asked a question during the hearings about their fundraising capacity, and we've really seen it drop off. I think if they match their fundraising capacity of the past, they would meet this need. I hadn't thought until just now, Commissioner Dorsey, as you talked about a partial funding, and we've already set a precedent of a match. And, if that would inspire I mean, I think one thing I'm concerned about headquarters is the lack of pulling a board together. I mean, we've gone for a while here without bringing in, I know they're bringing in a CEO, but I think to get back, I thought with our solvency funding, that would start the first round, that would start to kind of create the organization. And that doesn't seem to have happened to the level that maybe I expected it would. So I'll just toss that out there. It's an idea. That's all it is, but I'll just toss that out there to see what other commissioners think.
I think the problem with getting a board together is nobody wants to be on a board where the financials are still in question. And I think that's been recently wrapped up. And I thought Dan told us in a hearing that he had approached a couple of people and was in the process of forming a board. So I think it's in progress. It's just not there yet.
I didn't fund it. I felt like the solvency conversations we had last year were unusual. It's not something that I think we're likely to entertain, just open the floodgates and say, if you guys can't manage things, give us a call. So I was uncomfortable funding it 2 years in a row. I thought where they were, they really needed the help last year. And I think we helped get them back on track. And I think they're doing tremendous work there. I didn't support additional solvency funding. It felt more like just operating support at that point.
Yeah, I'm really with you, Commissioner Willie, on this. And the solvency requests we got last year were quite unique, and we did a lot of sort of additional work with both of those partners to get information back. And for this partner, it was quite recently, relative to our budget process, that we said yes to those funds and released those solvency dollars for this year's budget. And so I do hope to see that is working well for them and going a long way towards restabilizing. But I am nervous to set precedent around saying yes to these requests. And frankly, I'm more interested in the long-term possibility that headquarters being more fully shored up again and having a board and staffed and not in a position to ask for solvency because they've renewed their fundraising capacity and whatnot, that there are opportunities in the future for how they might be a partner to the county again in this work as their sort of reimagined self and as our continuum of crisis care has evolved. I'm much more interested in that conversation personally with headquarters as a partner than filling funding gaps year over year. I'm hard pressed to be convinced on this one.
Okay. The last one would be Heartland Community Health, the community health worker. We had 2 commissioners that were interested in funding that.
I would be one of them. So I think community health workers are super important to our community. I think they do a lot of really great work. And knowing that this one this position is not overly billable because they also do redetermination as well. I think this is a great opportunity to partner with headquarters and to bring on another community health worker. Heartland, what did I say?
Headquarters.
Oh, so sorry. We just talked about headquarters.
Yep.
Heartland, our federally qualified health center, and not headquarters. And then I also believe I bumped this down to behavioral health, probably, most likely, because community health workers do a lot of great work at our local level, and they can also address behavioral health and support mental health. They can support substance use disorder and many other areas related to behavioral health, which is also in our behavioral health bucket.
I thought it was in the behavioral health.
It is in the behavioral health.
Okay. And I funded it, but I don't feel strongly about it. So as far as convincing others, I don't think I'm there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just state for the record that I think community health workers are so important, but my reason for saying no to this is twofold, really. One, I think that asking for, I almost don't want to say this part out loud. Asking for just one is not very compelling. I'm interested in like if there's an increased need, if there is need that is not being met, and they have 10 currently, I feel like there's more story to be told and more information to be understood about what parts of their patient population are not getting access to community health workers, and is there a strategy for that that includes braided funding. So this idea that we would fund a singular one while all these other positions exist within the organization, funding in a variety of ways, feels very patchworky to me. And asking for just one, it just was not a very compelling ask. I'm interested in maybe a larger conversation about, can we identify a clear gap in services or an unmet need with community health workers in our integrated care system, and what does that look like, and who are all the players that might have an interest in investing in that? Is a conversation I'm more interested in having in the future.
I didn't include it, and this is an ongoing cost, and I think as I've referenced on other days, I'm worried about the PPS rate going up. I'm worried about KDADs, and I think community health workers are great. There's a huge impact that they have, but as we start to rank priorities and how many times we want to hit that fund, this wasn't one that rose to the top for me.
Okay. I think that's the end of the twos.
Sarah, real quick, I meant to say this at the beginning. Sorry, commissioners. We talked briefly last week about how Commissioner Anderson has another commitment today. We've come to that day, so I just wanted to level set about time. We might be doing really good on time, but Commissioner Anderson and I had talked about making sure that if we're still going at 10:45, we will adjourn then and give her time for that, and then whenever that's over, we can come back probably 11:15 to 11:30, or maybe we'll be done in 45 minutes or to an hour. Carry on, Sarah.
Okay. So we sent commissioners a list yesterday of everything else that received day one. It fills a whole page. So I guess instead of going line by line through this, I wanted to see if there were things commissioners wanted to talk about. And then we can also sort of just show you where we are with the mill levy right now. Jake, you've got that spreadsheet up to date. So Brooke could also put that up if you want to talk, if anybody wants to lobby for a one, now's the time.
I don't have a strong lobby for this, but the first one on the list, I think, was mine, that there is the extending access to counsel and self-help. But it sounded like maybe there were other people who did want to talk about it or not. Okay.
No one else put it down.
Okay.
I think another way, I mean, there's the list for us to each look at and see, oh, am I the one that said that? And do I want to say anything about it? I think also just looking back at all the lines that we have gone through in the past couple of days, which I think we've made great progress and had some really robust discussions. Is there anything lingering on any commissioner's mind that we haven't gotten to that feels important to talk about, regardless of whether or not we fund it?
I did put in the SNAP Ed nutrition educator, and it looks like somebody else put in the 3% cost of living. And so I didn't know if any of that was an either or if it's just there isn't support for either.
I did also put in the SNAP Ed educator as well.
Maybe you moved it to behavioral health.
No, that I don't think I
Oh,
did move that one.
okay.
Yeah,
I
'cause
didn't,
I didn't
we
think
didn't
that-
see that one.
that's okay.
So
Okay.
maybe there are two commissioners that are interested in that.
So yeah, I am interested in the SNAP Ed educator.
I know I put in for the 3% COLA, the 15,412 for the extension service. I find it odd that we're requesting a 4.4% increase for county employees, but we can't support a 3% COLA for extension employees. To me, that doesn't make sense.
Lots of organizations will come to us under that theory too. The flood will be endless.
Is that to the bottom of the,
That's the bottom.
I did move SNAP Ed to BH. Yes, sorry.
I like how you corrected the record. I will just state, I mean, I'm not supportive of funding the SNAP Ed educator, although I'm sad that that program is gone. I don't want to be the entity that picks up a loss of total federal funding. So I'm interested in more possible conversations about opportunities to reimagine that program in the future and how the county might be a partner in that, but not the funder of it on behalf of the federal government.
Other ones that commissioners want to
I don't-
discuss?
I don't see it on the list, but I'm concerned about our attorney fees jumping up to 750,000. We budgeted 550, I think, last year and overshot that considerably. And I'm not so sure it's not time to relook having in-house counsel for the general work that we could get done at $60 to $80 an hour versus 230 or whatever it is now for outside counsel, and save a bunch of money, acknowledging that for special legal services, you're still going to have to go outside, but there's probably a lot of contract work and employee type issues that an in-house counsel could handle.
Commissioner Dorsey, I would say I have two thoughts in response to that. One is, I mean, the increase that we see now is based on the increased legal needs and costs, and so I want to be clear that I mean, I think we have to be clear about saying yes or no to that amount in this budget, and can't change how our legal counsel is going to look for 2027 at this point. And then the other issue I see on the table is to just determine whether or not you have two other commissioners that are interested in having a longer, more unpacked conversation about legal counsel and the variables of in-house versus outside counsel.
I would say we've looked at this in the past, and we can always refresh our research on it and bring you other counties and what the size of their internal legal departments are, and what they also spend on outside counsel. If that's something the commission's interested in, I will tell you it never goes down.
My rough mental math doesn't find big savings in that. And I think what we would right now we're able to find the expertise that we need in every area. We would have to find a generalist who probably won't work for $60 or $80 an hour. I don't think we'd find savings there. So I'm not interested in spending a lot of staff time on it.
All right, not hearing any other commissioners jump on that conversation. Are there other things on this list or that you don't see reflected on this list that are important discussions to bring up?
I have a topic, but only if we have time. And that's a couple of years ago, we had started a potential match for broadband applications, because if they have a local match and it is pretty small, I think it was 10,000, then that helps boost their applications at the state level. But I don't know that I've ever asked where does that funded from? And is that something that we talked about sweeping the commissioner's equipment reserve? Is that something that would be there? I just didn't know.
Yeah, I couldn't pay for a match like that out of equipment reserve. It wouldn't be an appropriate expense. I think when the one match that we actually wrote a check for, we paid for out of the commissioner's budget, just out of the commissioner's general budget.
So that you're not worried about?
No.
We haven't had a ton of applications, but I think and only the one that was successful so far, which is the only time that the match would be drawn on. But I just want to make sure that if we did get some renewed interest, that we still had the ability to decide.
Yep, I'm not worried about it.
Okay, well, hearing no other burning thoughts from commissioners, in my mind, it's we have a delinquency rate conversation to maybe revisit and see if anybody's thoughts have evolved on that, or maybe staff has a different idea of what would be helpful to talk about next.
Well, I thought if we could throw up, Brooke, where we are on the commissioner's spreadsheet with the consensus decisions and where your mill levy is right now. So this is without any change to delinquency. There is a very slight reduction in the mill levy right now at 0.184. And, we could walk through what you've added. We did, I think, send that to you yesterday. Included in the list was the things that the commission has already agreed upon. Should be, the
This has been
page.
reflected. This reflects the thing we clarified for you earlier this morning about the empowerment.
Yeah, did we get the empowerment one added, Jake, to this version of the spreadsheet? Brooke, is it in there?
Yes, it is in there.
Okay. So
And that was funded as a
One-time.
one-time at the bottom,
Okay.
so that would not affect the mill.
Yeah,
The
levy
mill,
here.
thank
So it
you.
would
Yeah,
affect
I
the
just
mill.
want to make sure that
Yeah.
it was reflected in there since that was a change. And I don't think we made any other
nope,
changes
that's
this
all you've done
morning.
today.
Put it like that.
I didn't mean it like that. It's only changes you've made to this spreadsheet today.
So Commissioner Kelly, you made a mention of kind of balancing between the change in delinquency rate or reducing the general fund transfer to behavioral health. Do you want to talk more about that as you've kind of seen what the group has looked at funding or not funding?
Well, Brooke, I don't know how to show this, if there's a way to show it up there, but can you show us how much, based on all the things we've done to date, how much we are still transferring from the general fund to behavioral health?
You're still transferring 4.4.
4.4, that's what I'm trying to figure out. In order to, if we use that 4.4, does the number you showed for our general operating there, you said was under $1 million. Is
Yeah.
that correct?
Yeah.
Does that include the transfer of 4.4?
Yes.
Okay.
So with the transfer of and it's almost 4.5 million, there is a capacity of $953,776 remaining ongoing in the behavioral health fund. Brooke, can you kind of like shrink the size of the header a little bit just to try to maximize what we can see on the screen and up above in the little cell category? Yeah, and then the thing above it, the cell block, above the, what I'm talking about. The formulas, shrink the formula box. Yeah, thank you. I know you like but for this purpose, I think this will work. Okay.
So, I mean, just Mike, I was just saying as a lever that we can use, do we want to adjust? That would, of course, reduce the 900,000 that we have in that of ongoing expenses, but we haven't assigned any expenses to it. That is essentially, we would be reducing it, taking the risk that we don't think KDAD's funding will change. We don't think that the PPS rate will change. Is that risk feel more tolerable than a risk to reduce the delinquency rate? I'm just trying to figure out because I think it's if we want to push the mill lower, that's one way we could do it. So that was, I think, is that what you were asking for, Commissioner Willie?
Why do you think the delinquency rate is going to double this coming year?
I mean, I'm not saying that I think it is. I think that staff is making, I mean, I have 8 years of experience in this job. I think staff is using both their education and many more years experience than that to make a recommendation. Our job then is to sort of determine if we think that recommendation is valid. But I've been sort of hesitating to say this. I don't want to wear my tightest pants to Thanksgiving. I mean, because I want to give us some room in case. It's great to see that we've done really well, but if we don't, then unlike the behavioral, the transfer, we'd have to raise the mill levy. We wouldn't have any other option in my, or we could make large cuts. But that's just where my thinking. I don't know I'm interested in what the commission wants to do. I was just offering another way of getting to a mill levy goal.
And I would say, commissioners, like I've said, I think at 1.5, I'm not terribly uncomfortable. The pants are a little tight, but a 1% I would be very nervous about a 1% delinquency, but a 1.5, I am substantially less nervous.
I will say, for me, my goals and I guess main filters for this budget were I wanted to maintain a flat mill levy. It is not a goal of mine to lower the mill levy. If we happen to lower it after coming to consensus, a majority about all of the decisions that we've made, great. That's a win, even if it's slight. But that was not a goal I had in mind. So I was not trying to work down that rate at all. I really wanted to just hold a flat levy. And then my other thought was, knowing that we were moving some projects and having the transfers to the behavioral health fund, I had hoped to not see the ongoing capacity dip under $1 million. That was sort of my benchmark, was if we can keep $1 million in there, that feels comfortable. We're at slightly less than $1 million. So it's not too uncomfortable for me. And it feels like for me personally, like my two goals going into this have been met. We've held a flat mill levy. We've still funded some important things. I think we've made some smart decisions that get us to more continuity about aligning certain partners and projects and services over to the behavioral health fund and done some good cleanup there. And so for me, I'm satisfied with where we're at and not interested in really touching the delinquency rate because I do worry about, I'm not terribly risk averse, but I'm risk averse in some areas, and this is one of them. And I think that is, I think it's a well-stated number by staff. I obviously, if a majority of the commission is interested in lowering that or increasing that risk and recapturing some of those funds elsewhere. I'm open to that at up to 0.5%. But I won't be convinced past that. That's for sure. I prefer to leave it at 2% though, because we've achieved some mill levy reduction and not gone over, and which I assume was a goal for all of us, to not increase. And I still think that we have good enough and significant capacity in the behavioral health fund, and that can and will change year over year, to some degree, sometimes in the positive direction.
So I'm pretty sensitive to the fact that for a small number of our constituents, all of them that live in CFD1, that we have had a significant jump in, or we're recommending a significant jump in mill levy. And so I really did want to see what can we trim on, countywide, which I don't know that anybody objects to having a slower mill if we can at the county without compromising services there. But that was part of my goal, is to see what levers do we have in order to continue that trend. We can't do it forever. We'll right size. It's pretty, and maybe it's now, but that was my thought, is are there some other options for reducing the mill levy because we've had to raise it for CFD as one of the reasons.
I don't think we should reduce the behavioral health fund any more than it is. As you know, we have to renegotiate the TRC contract effective 1/1/2027. You have a union involved now, which you didn't have involved the last time that contract was negotiated. I suspect the outcome will be a little bit different than it was. So I would suggest lowering the, not lowering the 900 and some odd $1,000 that we've got in behavioral health.
I'm in agreement in not using the remainder of the 900 plus thousand in the behavioral health fund. I do think that we're going to have significant changes potentially coming down for the PPS rate. CMS is looking at cost saving measures, which I think are going to influence the work that is happening for the CCBHC and the TRC, that I think we're going to have to react to here at the local level. So am more in favor of taking a look at the delinquency rate, but not any lower than 1.5 if we have movement.
I'm interested in putting the delinquency rate at 1.5.
Did I hear 2 votes for 1.5 or 2
Yeah,
suggestions?
2 suggestions. Is there a reason we're sticking with 0.5s, 1s, and 2s, right? Is there another way? And that's maybe for staff. I'm watching heartburn happen right here in real time.
I think an even number makes life substantially easier for staff. And just to be clear, commissioners, Brooke and I have been over this because this is always a really strange thing for us. If the best way to see what this change will be is on your mill levy sheet, not in the budget request, because this really is just, it's on the top. So it's just trimming that piece on the top. And it really is only used to sort of reflect a lowering of the mill levy. So it's, you won't see that change really on this spreadsheet, other than maybe that we'll just change assessed value with 1.5 delinquency up there. That's it. The rest of this will be on the mill levy summary sheet.
It doesn't make a significant dent in the mill levy, so I'll say
Can you,
that.
Brooke, what would it do? Can you tell us what the 1.5 would do?
So it does make a slight adjustment, and then you would do for 131 here. So 0.199 to the mill levy.
And so you go from you go down to 0.384 as opposed to 1.84. So it's just a little over a quarter of a mil, you know.
I have to say, commissioners, I don't find that particularly compelling, but I've heard two commissioners state, well, I'd say Commissioner Willie, it sounds like your support is definitive for 1.5%. Commissioner Anderson, I think I heard you say you're open to 1.5%.
And so am I. I'd rather have one, but I'm willing to compromise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to recognize that we're seeing property values start to level out, property valuations start to level out. I still think this seems like a little something. I really look very closely just to sort of say at what our inflation rates are and how that impacts not only Douglas County government. I mean, we heard that, software went up, what was it, 300%? I mean, so like different pockets are going to increase at different rates. And I think that impacts not only Douglas County government, but it impacts our community members as well. And so that's something I'm always trying to see as, can you sort of find a balance point between the property valuation, how much your mill levy is, what the tax rate would be, and what that increase would be for folks. And so I understand what you're saying about not wanting to really shoot for a certain mill levy reduction. It is a number that I look at and try to figure out what's a reasonable impact that would be an increased cost for Douglas County that we can balance against our tax burden for our community members as well. So I think I'd move to 1.5. It sounds like there's 3 votes for it, and I would add mine to that as well.
So we don't get too siloed up. Keep in mind, the city residents are looking at a 2 mil levy increase in addition to the 4.9 average value increase. And then people in the townships are looking at a 4 mil increase in addition to the 4.9 average, although I think farmland was pretty close to zero, not much above zero. So, but everybody's looking at mill levy increases, whether they live in the city or in the county. Maybe Eudora and Baldwin are safe. I don't know about them, but I think we should be doing everything we can to reduce our mill levy.
Well, it sounds like we're going with 1.5% delinquency. And you've got that reflected in there now, Brooke. So staff, do you have open-ended questions or things that you feel you still need clarity from commissioners about?
I don't. I would just say we stopped, and staff helped point out we did not talk about merit, and I don't know that you wanted to make any other changes on merit, but we had said we would come back and wrap up merit. But I feel like you've kind of moved past that at this point. And we're here with 40.285 and a 0.384 reduction. So I don't think I have any questions. Brooke, do you have anything you think you need at this point?
No, Sarah, Commissioner staff plan to come before you Wednesday night to establish the maximum mill levy rate for the R&R notices that will go out. So that's the next step in this process.
I'd like us to calculate too, Brooke, where we're sitting on general fund reserve at this point. Once with the spending that we've done, I think we're still above 20 at this point, but I think commissioners will probably want that number. And we would prepare your R&R notices for 40.285 if that is the consensus of the commission. And we, frankly, guys, we've got more time here today. We could take a break, and we have time tomorrow, so we could come back tomorrow.
can't we reduce the 22% down to 20%? Wouldn't that affect the mill levy?
You'd be spending those one-time resources one time to lower the mill levy.
Yeah. I want to ask about merit.
Yeah.
Talk about, like, I totally agree that we want to spend one-time dollars on one-time expenses. Is merit, if we increase the merit, let's say to 2, talk to me about the impact of doing that with fund balances.
I don't love that
Okay, because
because it's ongoing. It's an ongoing expense paid for with one-time dollars, the same thing as lowering the mill levy on the back of one-time resources. I don't love that.
Thanks.
I feel like that's the only way I can be consistent in my approach.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And I think, I mean, my ideal would be if a 3% merit pool were possible this year, then I believe that staff would have budgeted for that. And I hope that we can get back to that in future years. But I don't want to just keep tapping into and taking from the general fund on a one-time basis for things that we know we're going to be discussing again next year too, and the year after that, and the year after that. But again, my goal is not to drive down the mill levy. I'm happy with the reduction that happened as a result of where all commissioners were in their priorities and the ideas we had about moving some things around and making some adjustments. But I'm not interested in dipping into our cash basis reserve any further at this point, personally.
Well, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, commissioners, any burning thoughts or questions that we want to get out of our system right now? I think otherwise we sort of have some decisions to make about, I mean, would staff like time to be able to, you've been calculating live, but would you like some more time and then to come back to us later today? Or would you, is it the preference? I mean, I'm interested in commissioners' thoughts too, preference to adjourn for today and come back tomorrow to wrap the
I'd
conversation?
rather come back tomorrow morning to give staff more time
Okay.
to fiddle with things.
Yeah, and hopefully it's a quick meeting tomorrow, that it wouldn't take too long. But I'd rather have the afternoon, and make sure we are where we are, and we can bring you back both CFD and the county budget.
Okay. Any other commissioner thoughts or objections to that we adjourn for today and come back tomorrow at 9? Okay, well, Commissioner Anderson.
I just want to say thank you. I just think these have been really good conversations and just appreciate the discussion that we've had.
Great. It's been a robust budget process. Look at us being ahead of schedule
I know.
too. We didn't need our worksheets on
I love
Friday.
I love it. I'm always, prepare for the worst, expecting. So thank you all for your work on this.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we'll still be seeing some of each other today, but we are adjourned for budget hearings until 9 a.m. tomorrow.